Hi, guys, and welcome back to Orchids World and More. And if you are new, thank you for stopping by. My name is Daya, and today we are a Ridge Orchid Society, and we're going to be listening to a lecture from Bret Ullery from Accent Orchids. He is going to be talking to us about repotting techniques. So grab your wine, your coffee, your milk, your tea, whatever you're drinking, and let's go listen to Bret.
All right, this is exciting for me because I'm just like Dennis the Menace. Okay, right? I like to make a mess. When I'm potting, I'm making a mess, and so we're going to talk about potting, and then everybody's going to get their own plant to pot, and you get to take it home. All right, so you're going to take it home, and then you can compete with your friends, right? Oh look. Look how much nicer my plant is than yours. So hopefully that's the case. Hopefully we're going to have some nice plants in the end. How many people came up here and looked at this mess I got going on? All these things in these little bins came from Alan back in the back from Garden Trails. This is his little setup so that you can see different types of media, different types of things that people pop with. So really all these little signs are pretty self-explanatory. All this orchid bark is orchiata. So that's some of the best stuff you're going to be able to buy. So why, that's the first question, why is some of it this big and some of it's real little bitty? How come?
Because of the size of the plant that you're gonna plant it with.
That's right. The size of the plant and the size of the plant's roots and how much water it likes. So if it doesn't like a lot of water, bigger. Because it's gonna let the water pass through and it's gonna dry out faster. The little bark mix is gonna hold water a lot longer. So then you got to decide. What do you got to decide? You got to decide what your commitment is, right? It's all orchids are all about commitment. So my commitment is I have a sprinkler system with 12 zones, and I try as best as I can to keep Ruth from putting them in the wrong place. Look at her.
She's gonna slap you.
Yeah, but you know what? She knows it's true. All right.
Stay away from you.
So in the summer, I go out there and I set my sprinklers, and they go off almost every day in most of the zones because by tomorrow morning they're going to be dry. So I pretty much grow outside like everybody else here. I don't have a big fancy greenhouse. So some of my plants are on their own. But that being said, so that's my commitment. My commitment was to spend the time and the money and have a sprinkler system that I could set. For somebody that's not got that commitment, you have to decide what it is. Somebody told me just a few minutes ago they love to go outside and play with their plants and water every day. Their commitment is every day. Right? My commitment is grandkids, all these other things that pull me in every direction, so I have a sprinkler system. Whose commitment is every other day? Right? There he is, right there. Hey, there's nothing wrong. Somebody here probably has the commitment of,
Every day.
I might think about it this week. Right? And somebody's commitment might be, I'll think about it in a couple of weeks. So, where your commitment is depends on the potting media. If you're committed to every day, you want a little bit bigger bark, you want something that's going to dry out faster. If your commitment is, when I think about it, you're going to want a smaller bark or some sphagnum moss or something that's going to hold the water a little bit longer. Unless they're outside right now and it's pouring on them every day. So, my favorite thing is I like to water. I like to walk out when my sprinkler system's going off and I just walk through there and I like the rainforest and I get soaking wet. And I look at my plants and I try to look at the sprinklers and see if they're all going off. But I also know that those plants are drying out every day. So that's going off all the time. Alternate potting medias, or I call this aliflor, because back when I started, that's what they called it. Now they call it hydrotone. They got all kinds of names. The name depends on where it comes from.
Expanded clay pebbles.
Expanded clay pebbles. So these expanded clay pebbles, everybody told me, oh, those will dry out fast. Not really. If you water just a little bit, they'll dry out fast. If you water a lot, they'll stay wet for a long time. The other thing that I haven't seen it for sale in a long, long time, he's got marked as baked shale, stay light. Most people called it stay light back in the day because it only came to two places, really. Kroll Smith brought it in by the dump truck load, and Hicks Orchid Supply dropped it off on a rail car because it came from the Carolinas. Now I don't know where you get it.
Hicks still got it.
Hicks still has it. So I know there's a kind of a pile of it over at Kroll Smith, but I don't think he's using much of it anymore.
Quest is using it like crazy. Quest is using it down in Miami.
Yeah. So anyway, the problem with it is it comes in by a rail car. How expensive is that today? So anyway, that's why you don't see a lot of it, and that's why you don't see a lot of people using it anymore. But the other thing I want to say, how many people have 10 orchids or less? There we go. One. How many have 100 or less? There we go. There's a lot of people there. How many have 3,000?
3,000.
Okay. Right here. I have friends that don't sell plants, and they have 4,000 or 5,000. Right? So, for those of you that only have less than 100 or so, why are you going to spend $200 or $300 with me or with Keith? You're going to buy a really nice plant that you love, and then you're going to go buy cheap potting supplies. That's almost certain death, right? It is. Buy cheap potting supplies, they go bad very fast, they kill the roots, and the plant goes away. So think about that. Buy the better bark, buy the better sphagnum moss. This is classic, something. Anyway, this is a very good sphagnum moss.
This is 10 miles. It's 10 miles.
Yeah, that one's not the mile moss.
Oh, it looks like
But Alan has mile moss back there. That's the best you're going to buy. If I had unlimited funds and unlimited place to put it, I would buy mile moss. But the only way I can get it cheap enough is I have to have it shipped from California, and I got to buy a pallet. That's too much. I don't have space for that. So this is what I buy from Alan. It's like this, but been in a much bigger thing. But he has the 1 mile moss over there. So anyway, the other thing, sponge rock comes in all different sizes. Most people that do regular plants, they call it perlite. Same basic thing, takes up space, holds a little moisture. Mainly it holds air. So orchids like air. Charcoal's getting harder and harder to find. A little controversy over charcoal. Like a fish tank, charcoal sucks out all the impurities in the water, right? But what do you do with your fish tank? You wash it back out, or you throw it away and you change it. Your orchids are going to be there 4 or 5 years in that pot. And is it soaking up too much impurities and then leaching it back out into your plant? I don't know. I'm not a chemist. I haven't checked it out. But that's something to think about. It's getting harder to get anyway, so I deleted it. One of the newest things for you cattleya growers that they're starting to go to because staylight's expensive and such. This looks like normal bark mix you get anywhere else, right? This is right here. This is Rexus bark. This is rubber mulch. Rubber mulch. Why do they go to rubber mulch? Anybody? It doesn't break down. This is probably an old tire. But it doesn't break down. It doesn't hold water. And so it lets air be in the pot. So when you're doing production potting, when I start potting, I add styrofoam peanuts, and then I add mix, and I add the plants. In production potting, you're using one thing, and you're doing it as fast as you can. So the big growers, like Keith over there, they're potting 500 or 600 plants a day, one person. They don't have time to think about how many peanuts, how much of this, how much of that. They got big bins of it, and they're potting as fast as they can. So, now, some people are going to say, oh, I buy all my plants from this person because I know their name, and they must be great because they ship plants everywhere. They're doing production potting. I do production potting. When I'm potting, I do a couple hundred plants at a time. So I'm going to go faster. If you're at home, you want to go better, right? So that's what we're going to try to do tonight, is talk about how to be better and what guys like me or some of the other big growers that hire somebody to come in and pot, what they do and what you have to watch out for. Right? Because there again, you're going to spend a lot of money for a plant, you're going to go home, and if you do nothing, it's slowly going to pass on. So you need to think about repotting your plants sooner than later, in my opinion, even if you get it from me. So I'm not going to tell you I'm better than somebody else, because I'm not. I get on a roll, I'm going to move fast. Right? So, you want to pass out plants and little pots, the tags, or individual things. Anyway, my lovely assistant, wife Ruth, is going to pass out some plants and some pots, and we're going to talk about how to pot those up and hope they don't die. But before we do that, I'm going to start making a mess, because that's what I told you I do.
Let's do it.
So this came from a nationally known grower. Grows beautiful plants. Look, that beautiful plant in this little 3-inch pot. Here's another one, came from the same place. Not going to tell you I don't buy from him, because I do. That's how I got them. So, I just told you that the big growers have production potting. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that, but almost guaranteed, when I pull this out of the pot and shake this media off of it, down in the middle is a ball of sphagnum that's going bad, right? 2 years from now, this will kill this plant. Because it's gonna rot, then it's gonna rot the roots that you have, and it's gonna die. So, if you had just taken this out of here and went, oh, it just needs a 5-inch pot, and put it in a 5-inch pot, certain death, really. So, nothing wrong with that. That's how all the growers are doing it. I don't care where you go. Happens all the time. This came from the same place. I can tell you that I was at another orchid society not that long ago, and somebody was talking about how they grew these plants themselves. You know what? They had this exact same cross. It came from the exact same place that I got it, and they told me that they grew them from flask in their backyard. You know what? That's great, but they didn't. But there again, same place it came from, and I'm going to bet you that when you take it out, again, there it is, a bunch of sphagnum moss with a bunch of dead roots. All right? So, when you get these, and they're starting to grow out of the pot, you better repot them. I don't care where you get it from. If you get it from me, you get it from Keith, we all buy these plants somewhere. So, we buy them somewhere. And I can bet you that this is not the best moss in town.
Maybe it was about 2 years ago.
And actually still today, I mean, it's, huh? Yes. So, anyway, let me make sure I get the right tag on the right plant here, because those are going to go home. I'll have those potting tomorrow. So, you're all getting a plant that's similar to this that came from Hawaii. So, that's probably the biggest place that grows little plants from flask by the millions. Literally by the millions. So, somebody just said it. If you got one of these, it has a little piece of brown styrofoam. They use a little piece of brown styrofoam instead of sphagnum moss. Why do they do that? Cheaper. It's cheaper.
And lighter.
And lighter. So these were growing in a 1-inch little plug, and even though it's styrofoam, it's going to break down. It's going to cause the exact same problem. It's going to rot these little roots, right? So that goes away. That's part of the mess I'm making. See, I helped set up, but when this is over, I'm going to run, and you all are going to sweep it up. So, just like Dennis the Menace, I'm going to make a mess, and I'm going to run. All right? So,
Absolutely.
what I do is I put 2 or 3 peanuts down inside there. My lovely wife should have brought you out some sphagnum moss that is less than the best you can buy. I can tell you that. I had this for quite a while, and I said, the other day when I was doing this same talk, I said, I'm going to use up this sphagnum moss. Because realistically, next year, this plant should be big enough to go in another pot. So next year, think about repotting it, right? So, this little plant, and you got some little roots, right? So little roots, what's that mean? Smaller bark, sphagnum moss. I can tell you that these little guys want to stay a little more damp.
Thank
They
you.
don't want to totally dry out too fast. So I take one of these styrofoam peanuts and I replace that
Thank you.
old nasty styrofoam. and I stick it there in the middle. And I still got 2 or 3 in that pot. And then we are going to wrap this around like so until you get a big old fistful of it. You think that's never going to fit in that little 3-inch pot, right? Well, you're going to squeeze out some of that water, just like that. And then with your thumbs, you hold the bottom of the pot with your fingers and you just push it down in there. Just like that. Real nice and snug. Now, when you push that down inside there real nice and tight, it does not absorb as much water as quickly. Did everybody get that? Mm-hmm. The tighter you pack it down, the less water it absorbs quicker. Now, if you sit and soak it, it'll take it longer to dry, but it's not going to get as wet when you just hose over your plants. So it's going to dry out faster. So that's what the peanuts are for in the bottom, is you want it to dry out faster. Now, once you know it's right, you should be able to hold it up there. So don't hesitate to do it again and start over and do it again. And when you think that you can do 200 plants in 4 hours, you give me a call.
I have ADHD, like, why you know, Lord? I can help out.
Don't forget your tag. She should have left you a tag, right? So you know what it is. Anyway, I'm going to take out this little styrofoam. Then I'm going to replace it in the middle with this styrofoam that's not going to break down.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Then we're just going to wrap this sphagnum moss around the roots in that piece of styrofoam until we can get a big ball of it, and then squeeze the water out. And press him back down in there. Right? Mm-hmm. Has everybody got that? Okay. I don't know if she came around with any of these.
No.
All these that are done with sphagnum moss, the plants will stay in there if you pack them in there. Everybody hold their plant up and not worry about it. Right? So, if you use a bark mix, these are bamboo skewers. So, if I'm using a bark mix, and like one of these cattleyas, I'll actually use this one. Now, this was the worst one, right? All these roots are dead. So, I sterilized these before I came. Anybody that's heard me talk before, the first thing you want to do before you cut on a plant is you want to sterilize your clippers. I did that for the first time when I got into orchids, and somebody told me that. And I used propane torch. And I will tell you that every time to this day, when I do that, my memory drops back to when I was 6 years old. Because back in the day, for all you young folks, we went to the cafeteria and we got our yearly shots. We did not go to the doctor.
Oh my goodness.
There was a nurse came in and she had a Bunsen burner. And it was doing that the whole time. And she took that needle and she heated it up and filled it full of that vaccine and stuck it in my arm. So every time I hear that thing kick on, right? Every time. I go back to when I was 6 years old, because what else did she do? When she was done with me, she took that same needle and ran it through that fire again, and she gave you a shot.
Oh.
And she did that all day. That's why we don't get sick as often as you do. We're used to it. We're tougher than that. Now I'm getting old and I don't feel as tough. But anyway.
If you were the teacher and you had all these little kids getting shots, you would have to hug them all because your first graders would be crying.
That's right. I was crying. No question I was crying. Okay, so you're going to heat them up with this little bit of torch until they just start to turn pink on the edge. Don't ruin your clippers by turning them bright red. 600 degrees is more than enough to kill whatever this plant has that you don't want that plant to have. So, and then, reality is, there's almost none of these roots that are going to do this plant any good. So what we're hoping for is this new one over here is going to put out the roots that are going to feed the whole plant. And until that happens, these little ones back here are going to feed that plant. That's how orchids work. They take care of themselves. So don't overdo them. So anyway, this is a 5-inch pot. That's really too big for this plant, depending on who you ask. So if you ask me, that's too big, huh?
4 or 5.
4 is good enough. So if you look at the pot you got, there's a little hole in it. And on the other side, there's another little hole in it. This one's the same way. A little hole on this side, a little hole on this side. Doesn't matter what size pot it is, this is how I pot it. All the way up to this one. This clay pot, I drilled 2 holes in. So, what we're going to do when we pot that cattleya is I'm going to put Allen's styrofoam peanuts, about 1/3 to 1/2. Allen don't need them. There's plenty left there. Right? He probably has more. But anyway,
He's having fun busting on out.
that's right. That's right. So, this is a cattleya. I want to water every day or every other day. So, lots of styrofoam peanuts. And I'm going to use this mix that my buddy uses with all this old tires. So, I put the mix in, I tap it down, there's no roots. Right? No roots, so I don't have to worry about the roots going down in the pot. What I do is I put that in that pot, and then we're going to take this bamboo skewer and we're going to put it through that hole on one side and back to the back bulbs of the plant. The back bulbs are these these old ones that have already bloomed, or they're just old. Not the front one. The front one is going to put out the new roots, and next year, hopefully, it's going to put out 2 new ones. Right? That's the goal, is more. More is better. So we're going to run this across there. And out the other side. And then I cut that off, and there it is. That's how I hold my plants in the pot. Alan back there, he's got some fancy pot clips. He does, and they're meant for these plastic pots, and they got a little circle, and you put them down on there, and you may be better than I, and it will hold your plant in the pot. I've never made one work to my satisfaction. So that's why I take this torch, and I heat up a little piece of metal, and I burn 2 little holes in it. And she'll tell you, I will sometimes spend 2 hours just burning holes in pots so that they're ready when I want a pot. I do production potting. That's what I told you, didn't I? Sometimes I do a couple hundred plants that morning. So I have to have everything ready. If it's not ready when I get up in the morning and I go out there and it's hot and not everything's ready, I have a hard time getting around to doing 200 plants. So my thing for the last 40-something years, when I was at work and it passed on to now potting, I worked like crazy until 1:30 in the afternoon. I went in early before anybody got there, and I non-stop worked till 1:30. And then I quit. And everybody else was still working. And you know what I did? I sat down and I read, and I looked at what was going to happen tomorrow. And then I got back up, and I prepped for tomorrow. That's the trick. If it's not ready in the morning, you're not going to go out and do it. Right? So in the evening, when you're a little bit tired, just go out there and get your stuff ready. So that when you wake up in the morning, you have breakfast or you have your coffee, you go out there and all your stuff is ready. And you'd be surprised how quickly all those plants get potted. If you can do that, get in touch with me. Because it doesn't matter. I could do 500 a day and I'm not going to catch up. So, but to me, the planning gets the work done faster. Ruth will tell you that. I worked for her for a while, fixing cars. And she would go, "Aren't you going to get that done?" Just like that. "Aren't you going to get that done? That guy's called me 1,000,000 times." But all my stuff wasn't ready. So I didn't fix it. So then when I got tired of listening to that, I go in the afternoon, I get all the stuff ready, then I'd fix that car tomorrow. And then I'd go to her and I say, "That's done." And she'd go, "What? You didn't even start on it yesterday. How'd you get 4 days worth of work done in a morning?" Because I was ready. So that was my commitment, right? Everything's a commitment. My commitment to any job is to try to be ready for it. I'm not a spur of the moment, pick something up and make something happen. I can do that, but I don't do it efficiently. So prep ahead makes it a lot more fun. She'll also tell you when I get done potting, I don't care if it's 10 o'clock. If I was so prepped and I went out early in the morning, almost before daylight, and I got it all done, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, I go, "It's time for a beer." Doesn't matter what time it is. Jimmy Buffett said it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Right? So, prep ahead and tackle that job, especially the one you don't like. But, so, this pot, I drilled a hole in. It has a bigger bamboo skewer. And if you come up and look at it, I put that plant in there. I got it all ready. I run that skewer through there, and I hold it in place until all those roots start getting attached in there, and then you can either take that bamboo skewer out or you can not. So I personally, my own plants, I like clay pots. Right? I just do. So same thing happens with baskets. I don't know if I got one that still has bamboo skewers in it. Those I usually end up pulling out, but I didn't. I don't have one that way. But all these baskets, I do that same way. I run one of those skewers through there to hold the plant in until it gets caught. So, Alan doesn't want me to tell you this. You can grow that plant just in this pot. Right? Look at those roots. Now this one has a few pieces of lava rock that I got at Lowe's. Not that fancy stuff that Keith uses. Yeah.
When you put that in the pot, did it have that many roots? Did you have
No.
roots? Did you guide them through the whole?
Just like that one right there,
Cut them all off.
I cut them all off.
Okay.
And I just put a few pieces of lava rock in there. And I had one of these fancy pots that Alan sells back there. But, what?
Hose
I
it
water
over.
this every other day. So, but if you do it when you remember, just put a little bark in there with it. But reality is, this is a Shambo cat or Murmio cattleya, whatever the cross is. So somebody tell me how long it's been in this pot.
A year,
Huh?
1 year, 6 months.
Less than 6 months. Right? Why is that?
Wow.
Why did it get this many roots
She loves it.
that quickly? First thing is, it was ready. It was ready to repot. At the time, it was putting out a new growth right here, which I knocked off. So it was ready to start putting out roots. So when you see your plant, I don't care which one it is, starting to put out new growth, that's when you're going to repot it. If you want it to look like this in 6 months. Right? So.
How do you repot that?
Huh?
How do you repot that then?
Oh, later? I break this.
Okay.
Or I wait for this to grow out. There's nothing in here that's going to break down. It's lava rock and a clay pot.
Okay.
So it could stay in here like this until it grows out here. Right? So if I let this grow out here, I just clip it off and put that piece in another pot. And then hope that the plant itself goes, oh, I lost the front of the plant, and down inside here it'll send out a new one. So, and that's what this has done. When I broke that new one off, when I potted it, now it's got another one coming because it wants to live. It's fighting, right? What's the other thing I do to get roots like this?
Water.
Water. I actually spray them when I pot them with, we call it Laura juice, but my friend Laura makes it. It's plant potion number 9. And I spray them then. You're supposed to spray them, she says, once every 4 to 6 weeks, and it's a foliar fertilizer or minerals. I don't do that. I have 12,000 plants, I don't have time, and I don't have the money. But when I first repot them, I try to go through, take a pump sprayer and spray them with that, and that's supposed to promote root growth. The other thing I do when I do this is I don't water it. Very little do I water it. Because what happens, if somebody drops you in the desert, what are you going to do?
You'll be thirsty.
You're going to hunt water, right? That's the first thing you're going to think about. Somebody dropped me in the desert. How do I get out? And where's the water? Right? Plants are the same way. It's going to know that right here, I'm watering those guys. And so these roots, if you look, are kind of going like this. Because the better water is over here. So it's hunting for the better water. So it's going to grow roots faster. So then once it starts to get the roots on the pot, then I move it back to a better spot. Same thing with these wooden baskets. There's absolutely nothing in here. I do them the exact same way. So I usually deprive them of water too at the same time. This pot does have a bamboo skewer in it. It doesn't need any longer.
What happens if Ruth puts it in the wrong place?
It might die. I can tell you that I say that today, and I said it because I know that in the morning, when she's over at her dad's and she's not around, there's like 5 plants that she moved today while she was weeding and cleaning up. She moved, and they are not going to like where they're at. Because she was moving plants around and doing a fabulous job weeding and pulling through the plants that might not make it for a while or whatever. And she moved a couple things that I liked from where I liked them. And you can bet when she's not around, I'm going to go, this thing was supposed to be over here. And I'm going to move it. Is it better there? In my mind, it's better there.
With the same podium back.
But you got to think about it. This one's almost full sun. Right? Another plant she moved wants almost full sun. But it's too shady where she put it. It looks like it would love it there. Nothing wrong with it. It might love it there. But to me, it wants more light. So I'm going to go move it tomorrow. That's just the way it is. Right? You have to know what you got. This plant is little. It wants light, but it wants more shade. Right? This plant grows in full sun somewhere. You put it in the shade, it's not going to dry out fast enough. It's not going to be happy. So I got to move it. So you got to think about that. When you're in your backyard and you go, wow, that thing's blooming beautifully. And oh man, look, this one's blooming beautifully. And if I put them side by side, think how beautiful that's going to be when they bloom. No. Because one of these is going to die. This one likes lots of light. This one not so much. Put them in the same place. This one doesn't want as much water. This one wants more. One of these isn't going to make it. Right? One of them's not going to make it. So think about that in your backyard or wherever you're growing. Where she moved those other plants to is not bad. But what she didn't realize and what she wasn't thinking, because she was pulling weeds and cleaning and sorting and making everything look better, was The shade tree is shading this all day. It's not going to be happy. So think about that in your own yard. When you're potting, that's the best time when you're potting, because then you want to find it its new home. It's beautiful now, it's repotted, you know it's going to take off, you know it's going to do better. Find it that good spot. Find it its home for good. So, what else do I got? You know, vandas. Vandas, most people put these in a basket or something. I tie them to a piece of wire. All the vandas I do. Because reality is, yeah, in nature it's growing on a tree and these roots are probably grabbing hold. Or maybe it's growing in a shrub. And those roots aren't really grabbing hold. It's just hanging out in the shrubs. And the roots are in the shade and the plant's in the sun. So, vandas are that way. They really, as much as they love a little bit of sun and a lot of light, the roots want to be in the shade. So, Ruth will tell you her mother had a vanda that stayed in a hedge for how many years? A long, long time. It was one vanda. When I met her down in Fort Lauderdale, it was growing in a shrub that was probably 50 feet long. And there were pieces of it sticking up all through there. Never got water unless God gave it to it. Why? If you did that with this, it would die. All the roots were running down the shrub where they were staying wet longer. And the plant was hunting the sun. So, got to remember that. Sometimes you got to shade just the bottom of the plant. Think about how they grow. Think about repotting, mounting plants if you've got that commitment. If you mount a plant, you're going to have to water it more often, right? So that's the real key. To me, less water more often. So I might, on a good day when I really want to water them a lot, I turn my sprinklers on and they go for 6 minutes. 6 minutes. How much is that? It's enough to get the plant wet, but it's dry tomorrow. So it's not soaking all the way through the pot. It's wetting the plant, it's wetting the top, but it's not soaking all the way to the bottom. Now, if you do that, that means once a month or so, you got to turn the sprinklers on for 30 minutes or to an hour so that it washes out all the impurities. So, but less water more often, to me. So, in nature, that's usually how it goes. Less water more often. So, the other thing you find at my place is floating around, you'll find rubbing alcohol and hydrogen peroxide. So I take these little bottles, and I get these little spray bottles for $1.25 at the Dollar Tree. Now they're $1.25 tree, whatever. So I just pour this hydrogen peroxide in this bottle, right? No. Then I would have to label it. Because if you're, this thing screws right on there, just like that. And then you just use it this way. I don't have to relabel it. It comes with an original package. I use this for any kind of mildew or fungus or whatever as I'm walking through the greenhouse. I'm not a big fungicide person. Some people fungicide religiously, but I got greenhouse cats and I like them. So The less chemicals, the better. So you'll find hydrogen peroxide for any kind of fungus or something like that, and rubbing alcohol to kill the insects. Now, if I get an infestation of thrips, my neighbors will not be happy because I will put orthene through my watering system. And orthene stinks. But my neighbors will get over it. So, and I'll try to shoo the greenhouse cats away. And hopefully they don't get it on them, but that's life. So.
Guys, I hope you really enjoyed this lecture as much as I did. I loved it. Please, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. I really will greatly appreciate that. Please don't forget that Rich Orchid Society is going to have a beautiful event on September 28th and 29th. I have attached the information for you guys to see, and do not miss it. It's going to be amazing.